Hey, Pennsylvania, it's Wine O'Clock on Wine Time, PA. Join Rob, Holly, and Steve as they explore their home state of Pennsylvania and all the wonderful wineries it has to offer. Each month, they take a journey tasting the wines of PA. If you're able, pour a glass of your favorite wine and join us now for Wine Time.
Welcome again, everyone, to another episode of Wine Time, PA. I'm one of your hosts, Rob, and with me, as always, are my good friends and co-hosts, Steve.
Hello.
And his lovely wife, Holly.
Hi, everybody.
This podcast is just featuring three ordinary wine drinkers who love to explore their home state of Pennsylvania and visiting the many wonderful wineries across the state and sampling as many of the wines as we can and giving you, our listeners, our recommendations on those wines. In this month's episode, we are traveling to the southwestern part of the state to a city called Portage, which is located between the cities of Altoona and Johnstown. For today's episode, we are visiting Germantown Winery. We visited in March of 2026, so any information we share today is from that time frame. For starters, you do not need a reservation to visit the winery, but please note that they are only open on Fridays and Saturdays. However, you can reach out to them by appointment and visit on other days of the week per their availability. We discovered this winery by researching wineries in this part of the state to visit and were impressed by their positive reviews and wine selection, so we added Germantown Winery to our list of wineries to check out. Now, I will also note that this was our first time that the three of us had been to this wine or even tried their wines, and I just gotta say my first impression was wow. And so I'll just let Steve and Holly tell you a little bit more about this winery.
Yeah, what a great visit. The winery is owned by this lovely couple, Tom and Kathy Krinjek, who just actually guided us through our tasting that day. And we just want to take a moment to express our thanks. They were warm and wonderful hosts, and we just really enjoyed talking to them.
Yeah, Tom, Kathy, you were awesome. From email to arrival to the moment we left, just thank you so much for a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it was just a great visit, and we just thank you for your hospitality.
So the winery actually got its roots when Tom got a Christmas gift one year that was a winemaking kit. Tell me if you've heard this story before. He started making the wine and still doing it 25 years later. He used to be a contractor, though, so the building next to their home was used for that contracting business, and it just eventually turned into their winery when they opened their doors in 2014. They are at 2,764 feet of elevation, and that higher elevation in Pennsylvania is a challenge to grow grapes, even though they gave it a good shot. Well, the majority of their grapes do come from Pennsylvania and New York, so it is regional. Though a few do come from other regions, such as their Shiraz, which is from Australia. And I think it's mentioned on their website that Tom is focused on perfecting their wines and experimenting in that realm, while Kathy is focused on the hospitality side and making sure everyone feels welcome and has a great visit. However, you can tell from talking to them how much they both care about not only the wine they produce, but just their community at large. We noticed that every customer walked through the door, they welcome them as though they were lifelong friends.
Yeah, I think to reiterate, we said it numerous times, it's definitely a very warm and welcoming winery. And that kind of comes into the setting a little bit, which I'm going to talk about here. As Steve mentioned, the winery is at a higher elevation. So you were up in the mountains when you visit this winery. There's no question about it. I actually found it quite a lovely drive as we visited, even though it was March and the trees didn't have any leaves on them yet. But I'm sure if it's really nice if you go like spring through fall as well. You'll notice when driving up as well, you may notice some windmill farms, which are very close to the winery. And I actually find it kind of cool to get a little close to these.
Yeah, they weren't as big as I thought they'd be, right up close.
Yeah. But it's still fascinating. They're just like
big.
right there.
Yeah, they're still big.
Yeah. So obviously, I think as Stephen mentioned, the winery was a contractor business at one point that they owned, but they did a great job of making it into a nice and warm, inviting space. Like I wouldn't have known it was a contractor, business. I could tell it's probably a commercial building at some point, but it was still really warm and welcoming. The outside is this dark brown that really fits with the mountain setting. The inside, the walls are just this white color, which brightens up the space, but they have these wonderful dark wood accents, which also kind of brings that outdoor setting indoors. It has a wonderful and cozy, welcoming feeling, much like our host. It's nicely done and is no way pretentious at all. There are some nods to their German roots in the decor, which I really liked. There are a couple of rooms inside the winery. There is the room which has the wine and the other items for sale, as well as a long bar. That's where we sat for our tasting, was at that long bar. In the second room, they have lots of tables and chairs for seating that you can hang out in as well. And finally, though, it was a warm March day when we visited. It wasn't quite nice enough to sit outside, but they do have lots of outdoor options should you want to visit during the warmer season. And I also think it's worth mentioning they have an outdoor pavilion that they use to host events that can be rented during those warmer months for things like weddings, showers, parties, and memorial services.
So to try their wines, you can either do a tasting of 6 wines, or you can do a flight of wines. When we visited, they had about 31 wines listed on their tasting, though a few wines were not available that day. Their wines were broken down in the following categories. They had 10 white wines and 10 red wines, and those range from both dry to sweet and everything in between. And they also had listed 11 wines as fruit. They were out of blackberry and diamond wines during that visit, as well as the Merlot. And I know Merlot is one of my favorites, so I'm going to have to make sure I get back to try that. Diamond's also a popular pick between the three of us. So I think, again, another excuse for us to go down and visit them again when they have the diamond back in stock.
Yeah, I always like a good diamond, so I'm curious about that one. If you're going to go with a group and you're not really into wine, they do offer other items. They have some beer options, some of your very familiar Pennsylvania classics like Yingling, Sam Adams, which is mostly produced in Pennsylvania, by the way, and Straub. They also usually have a German beer, so that's kind of appreciated and interesting. They do have some other spirits as well, so you can get some mixed drink options. And they have some bottles of water and soda for those of you who don't like alcohol.
In terms of food right now, they just offer some cheese and crackers for snacking, which I want to give them a huge thank you, as they made a snack box of some delicious cheese and crackers for us that day complimentary. They did not have to do that, but it was really nice. I want to give a big thanks for that. During the warmer months, Kathy mentioned they usually do have food trucks out there. It sounds like it's okay to bring your own food, but if you're there in the warmer months, maybe check out to see if they have a food truck. Finally, we want to mention they do a lot of events throughout the year, but there is one in particular that is a huge event they do every year at the winery. They, of course, do an Oktoberfest. It's their biggest event, and they said several hundred people show up for it. They have things like live German dancers and German food options. They also do specialty drinks as well. It sounds like a ton of fun. This year it takes place on October 3rd, so if you're interested in this event, I would recommend marking your calendars, and there's a really good chance you may bump into us there.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to try to go.
Yeah, it sounds like a great thing. I'm Pennsylvania Dutch, so this is like right up my alley with the food and the German theming. So yeah, I think you might be able to see us there if you want to come and meet us.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to the best part of the episode, and let's talk about the wines themselves. As a reminder, in this part, we will start by giving you 2 of our group picks. These are 2 wines that the 3 of us really enjoyed and think that you should consider, or that we think are just crowd pleasers. After that, we will give you 2 of our individual picks. These are based on our personal favorites. As always, these recommendations are based on our own personal palates and preferences. We are not being paid nor endorsed for our recommendations. We always believe that when it comes to wine tasting, don't be afraid to try new things, but also don't worry about what others think is good and just drink what you love. Finally, we did want to mention that we don't expect anything from a winery when we visit and always pay our cost. However, besides the complimentary cheese and crackers, they did comp us a couple of extra tastings through that visit. So again, we just want to shout out Tom and Kathy and thank them for their hospitality and for that extra service. Wasn't asked, but we do appreciate that. All right, Hailey, why don't you kick us off with our first group pick today?
Okay, our first group pick is a semi-dry red wine, and it's the Shiraz. Now, this had a great smell, which I think honestly all of our wines actually had a really good smell, but this was a very smooth red wine. It was so well balanced with a little bit of spice and some fruit notes to it, and just this amazing, wonderful finish. It's a wine that can be seen served at a dinner with a ton of wonderful food options if you're having people over. And also to note, Tom said they serve it at room temperature, which we all enjoyed, but it's one of those reds that can be chilled and will give you a little bit of a different flavor profile.
Yeah, this was just a wonderful semi-dry red. I rated this as pretty much near the top of my list. So if it wasn't a group pick, it was going to be a raw pick for sure. And I just love that it had the hint of some smokiness in there, and it kind of just evaporated in the back of your mouth as you're drinking it with those tannins in there. Just a lovely wine.
Yeah, I thought this was a nice, pleasant surprise. I like how it started with a lot of like red fruit and then just slowly got drier and just had this great finish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good wine.
All right, so our number 2 pick for the group is the Treminette. Yeah, so this is one of the best Treminettes that I have had.
And that's saying something.
Yeah, we've had some good ones. There was a lot of floral aroma to start, but the balance of floral and citrus in the taste was just perfect. One of the things that really made this stand out to me was that the citrus was more of an orange citrus than a lemon citrus, and it just made it a little bit better in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I just love the floral and the orange combo. I actually put in my notes that it sort of reminded me of Moscato. Like, I could definitely tell it wasn't a Moscato, but that orange and the floral was just enough there to make me think that.
Yeah, again, this would have been another no-brainer raw pick, so I'm glad it's a group pick. Treminette's, I've mentioned this before, it's one of my favorites, and this one was just superbly done. Nice blend, like you said, Steve, of the floral and the citrus notes, well blended. I thought the citrus notes dominated more, but that's maybe because I seek those out in my taste, and I prefer that. But the floral notes were right on, and yeah, I bought a bottle of this and took it into the room.
Me too.
All right, so now I'm going to start us with our first individual picks, and I'll kick us off and choose the Norette.
Good choice.
Now, this was hard for me to choose the wines because all of their wines were just really well done, and they all tasted really great. But I decided to revert back to my normal palate and pick a dry red that is similar to the Shiraz, one of our group picks, and that was the Norette. I believe this was the first wine we tried that day, and let me tell you, it was just really well done. It had a lot of the right notes for me, including those pepperiness, some cherry, even a nice light tannic finish. I even noted that there were some peppery aromas that kind of reminded me of like beef jerky when I was taking a sniff of this. But it was nice and smooth, great dry red, and especially if you're into dry reds, this will be a good one for you to try. And if you're not into dry reds, I recommend you try this one anyway.
Yeah, I really like this one a lot more than I thought I would. I got some notes of tobacco with the pepper and the cherry in my notes. Yeah, and I usually don't like tobacco in wine. However, it was more subtle, so it worked really well with the other things. And I noted it was a great steak wine. Now, that's easy to say about most dry reds, that they're a great steak wine, but this one in particular deserves a mention of pairing it with a steak.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so I'll kick us off with my number 1 pick, and that's the Steuben. And that is way off brand for me.
Way off brand.
Yeah. So I hate Steubens usually. There's just a flavor in Steubens that I don't know what it is yet. I don't know how to describe it, but I just don't like it. This Steuben did not have that flavor, so it just left behind everything else that was nice. And first off, it's lighter in color. It's almost pink, so it stands out a bit. I got some really nice strawberry flavors, which it was a little bit subtle, but it was kind of perfect. It was just light and refreshing, had this wonderful finish. And this is a perfect reason why I just try everything, even if it's a wine that I typically don't like, because you never know when you're going to find something that really surprises you.
Listeners, let me just say that if Steve loves this wine, you will too, because, he has that aversion, as you mentioned, to the Steuben wine. But I rated this one really high as well. I don't have that aversion to the Steuben, but it was just a really great wine and another great pick.
Yeah, I think I almost picked this wine. I think it was probably number 3 for me. I'm Steuben neutral, but I really did like this one. I put it was sweet and grapey. I know that's a weird thing to say. But there were some nice floral notes to it and it went well. And I love the strawberry, that Steve mentioned. I really enjoyed that too.
Yeah, it even had a little bit of acidity, I thought, in the finish there. So it was just a nice all-around wine.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to pick this one because it's so against the grain for me, but that doesn't mean I didn't like it. This was really a well done wine, so I recommend it to anybody.
All right, so my turn for my first individual pick. It's probably one of my favorites of the day, and that was the Geisenheim. I think we've mentioned this grape It's a green or white grape varietal that you see a couple times in this podcast, but I don't think it's come up too often in our podcast. The grape originally hails from Germany, which makes sense that a German-inspired winery would sell it. A note about the grape I pulled right off the internet. Geisenheim plays an important role in German winemaking, especially in cooler regions where cold, hardy varieties are essential. Its resistance to disease and adaptability have made it increasingly popular among winemakers looking to grow sustainably and use hybrid-friendly grapes. So, Geisenheim is important in German. Sounds like it's on the rise. Anyway, Germantown Winery's version is a dry white wine that is very aromatic with lots of floral in the smell. When I tasted it, I got the floral notes in the start, then I got some nice apples, but there was also some light notes of something like creamy and citrusy in there that I really enjoyed. I loved as well that it was very light and not heavy at all in the palate, and for me, this is like a sip on all wine all day kind of wine. Like, I'm going to have a bottle of this and socialize with people and drink the whole bottle.
Yeah, this could have easily been another pick for me. Almost did, if not for my upcoming second pick, which, spoiler alert there. But yeah, just those apple flavors in there and those notes of citrus were just really spot on. And, you know, if you're not sure about this is a very similar, and I think it's actually related to the Riesling, somewhere in the lineage, parentage there. So if you like Riesling wines, definitely try the Geisenheim.
Yeah, I like this one also for all the reasons you guys said. I think there's that region of Germany that's a little cooler and has all these things like Gewürztraminer and stuff that I just really like, and this one just fit into that well.
We need to plan a trip to German wine country is what I'm hearing.
Talk.
All right, so my number 2 pick is going to be very on brand, and that's the cranberry.
Shocker.
Yeah. I swear cranberry is my favorite fruit, and I really look forward to trying cranberry wines when they're available. This one's interesting and a little bit unique. It starts out a bit sweet, but ends very tart. And I think that differential is what makes it so unique and fun to drink. I love the tartness of cranberry, but that little bit of sweetness at the start just gives it a nice touch, and it makes that transition to the tartness even better. This is also their best-selling wine, so I'm not alone when I say this is good. Also, I do think I remember them saying that this was the wine that kind of put them on the map and got them really going.
Yeah, they did say that. And it's a solid cranberry. I mean, we try a lot of cranberries, especially in this house, because Steve loves them, and it's a good solid cranberry.
My notes for this wine just simply said, the best cranberry wine I've had.
And you
don't like cranberry.
I'm not a big cranberry fan, but I really enjoyed this cranberry wine. So I can understand why it's their bestseller.
Yeah.
Because it's really well done.
Yeah, Steve always likes cranberries, but if Rob likes a cranberry, it's saying something.
All right. My number 2 pick, I'm going to go right into my wheelhouse and pick the Fredonia. Yes, I picked a Fredonia. Not sorry about that. But my notes just simply started out by just saying, wow, wow, wow. Now, this was listed as a sweet wine, but it really didn't drink like a sweet, almost more like a semi-sweet. There was even some bits of tartness in there, though that could have been left over because I think I tried this right after that cranberry. But that just really made it even better. But it was a smooth wine. It's one of my favorite grapes. An amazing wine. Similar to a Concord, maybe not quite as sweet. And yeah, another bottle of this came home with me.
Yeah, I easily could have picked this too. I rated it right up there with the cranberry. It was very smooth, not overly sweet, and I also got some tartness in the finish, which just, to me, added to the experience.
You guys love a good Fredonia.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, it always reminds me of the Concord, but just less sweet and a little easier drinking.
Yeah, a little tiny bit lighter bodied. And easier to drink.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment.
It's just a great if you want something sweet or semi-sweet, and you just don't want to be like overloaded with
the sugars and
the
the
sugar.
sweetness.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I'm going to finish our individual picks, and my second pick was the Riesling. So I find it funny that you mentioned the Geisenheim as a cousin to the Riesling, so that was my second pick. So I kind of moved away from Rieslings there. I was really into them several years ago, but lately I feel like I'm getting back on the Riesling train, and this was a standout one, and it was a little atypical than most Rieslings. It was a semi-dry Riesling with lots of wonderful apple smell, but you also got apple in the taste. It actually starts with some citrus notes in the beginning, then you get all that apple, and then it finishes with some honey. There was some that sort of mild petrol that you expect from a Riesling, mixed in, that gives you that minerality that you kind of want with a Riesling, but it was more subtle. But their tasting sheet compared it to a Sauv Blanc. And I love Sauv Blanc, so that might be why I liked it so much, because I didn't really think Riesling when I tried it. I was thinking this is just a nice wine.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked it. I like that honey bit, and I'm not a big fan of honey in wines. Something about the way it ferments, just not. But this was great. I thought this was a great balance. And to your point, I think we like Rieslings because it's kind of a wine that's hard to mess up. You take that Riesling grape, and anybody can make a good drinkable Riesling. But to make a really standout one, it's a little more challenging. And this one was a standout.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rieslings are kind of that generic wine, I consider it. Like, you can just have it for anything. And yeah, as you said, Steve, it's hard to find one that gets messed up. But when you find ones that are good, and this one was a good Riesling, it's worth noting. So, good pick, Holly.
Yeah, it was really unique. So...
All right, I think that wraps up our picks. Anything else we want to shout out? Holly, any other shout outs?
I'm going to mention the Elvira. It's a great variety, and I think this is the first time we've come across it in Pennsylvania, and it was just interesting wine. It was like a darker yellow color. I think there was some honey maybe in the taste and some citrus and some floral. It was just unique. So it was a sweeter wine, but for me, it's when you see a variety that you're not used to seeing at a winery, I always kind of want to shout it out because I think it's worth expanding your palate by trying new things. So that's why I want to shout out the Elvira.
Well, I wanted to shout out the Merlot, but they were out of it that day, so I'm going to have to go back and give a post note on that one later. But I'll give a shout out to the Connor's Cocktail. It's their cran apple.
Jeez, Rob, cranberry.
So I like apple wine, but I really like their cranberry, and you put them together and you get a great wine in their Connor's Cocktail.
Cranberry and apple go together exceptionally well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've kind of a lot of wineries that we visit. I've noticed if they sell them both, they will, mix them together, but like they actually pre-package a bottle of it mixed, which is kind of cool. It's not something you see as often.
Yeah.
All right, I don't have any honorable mentions because you guys stole my honorable mentions as your picks. So I'm going to move on to the best sellers. So in terms of the best sellers, besides the cranberry that we already mentioned, their Ruby Red, which is a Concord Niagara blend, their Niagara, and their Catawba are some of their best sellers. And I'm not really surprised we didn't mention the Catawba. I really thought this was a good Catawba. If you like Catawba, you're going to like their Catawba. Clearly, it's one of their best sellers.
So that's your shout out there.
I guess it is, yeah.
So... Well, there you have it, folks. Another wonderful visit to another Pennsylvania winery in the books. Tom and Kathy are not only create some wonderful smelling and tasting wines, they've created a warm and welcoming atmosphere of a place you could easily hang out for several hours. For more information about their winery, please visit their website, www.germantownwinery.com. You can also find them on social media. We would also love it if you haven't done so already, to find us on Facebook and Instagram and give us a follow. Tune in on the first Wine Wednesday of next month as we explore and discuss another Pennsylvania winery. Until next time, cheers.
Thanks for listening to Wine Time PA with your host Rob, Holly, and Steve. We hope you enjoyed our take on Pennsylvania wineries and all that they have to offer. Please be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast. Also, be sure to follow them on social media for updates and news. Remember, when it comes to wine, drink what you love.